Welcome to A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm your host, Eric P. Bishop. This is a podcast where interesting people come and tell about the stories they've crafted. As for myself, I'm an author. I've created novels, short stories, novellas, and even poetry. If you'd like to find out more about what I've done, please go to my website, ericpbishop.com. Thanks, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Today, we have Thomas G. Waits with us. Hello, Thomas. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on. I've had a bunch of, I think you're probably guest number 27 or 28 I've had this year. Um, but not to toot your own horn too much. However, I believe you're the most diverse in your skill sets.
Uh,
I was looking through your bio a while back when we first were
uh-huh.
conversing, and John had introduced me to you, John
Love
Guinieri.
John.
John's an amazing guy. So we have director, actor, writer, musician, teacher, songwriter, guitarist. I mean,
Filmmaker.
filmmaker. Yes, that's on my list of things to talk about. So,
I
I,
know I so appreciate everybody does being lauded with praise, and it is a rather diverse set of skills. And I sometimes have trouble with that, like how to market it, because I can do a few things,
right.
but it really was, I mean, the truth of the genesis of it, let's put it that way, is much more interesting than the result.
Hmm.
What I mean by that is I did have a propensity for acting when I was very young. I grew up in a rough section of a place called Bristol, Levittown, outside of Philadelphia. Race riots, a lot of scuffling, and fortunately, the heavens sent me a great gift and got me run over by a car, which put me in the hospital for a good 6 months and then a body cast for another three
Wow.
months. Yeah, I really fucked myself up. My femur bone, the biggest bone in your body, strongest bone in your body, snapped in half.
Snapped.
And they had to put it in traction. And so during this process, I had gotten, this is back in the days when you used to be able to smoke in hospitals. So I would lay there and they would give me an injection of Demerol at night, and I'd light up a cigarette and I would just go, wow.
Oh my goodness.
I'd be off and, never land.
Right.
And, that last, the first week I was in such severe pain was
Hmm.
required. But then around the eighth or ninth day, they weren't giving it to me. So
Okay.
I'd pull the emergency cord and put on this show of like, ah! And the nurse was a neighbor of mine, Nurse Richardson. She lived around the back street. She ran and got the fucking needle. And am I allowed to say fuck on this?
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
You can edit it out,
No,
right?
we're good. We're good. We don't have kids watching this, I don't believe. My own kids don't watch it, I tell you what, that's for sure.
Right. My kids don't watch anything I do either. So she gave me the injection, and then the doctor came in a couple days later, and he's looking at the chart, and he's like, "This is way. What are you doing? This is way too much Demerol for him at this point." And the nurse looked at me, and when she went, "You ought to be an actor," and a light bulb went off over my head,
Wow.
because up until then I'd been wedded to more physical things, like I wanted to be a football player, or a
Hmm.
basketball player, even though I was um, little, 5'7". Um, and so that planted a seed. And
Hmm.
during that time, there was nothing to do. The universe had pinned me to this bed.
Yeah.
So I had to start reading.
Okay.
And the reading allowed my imagination to get freed up. And then
Hmm.
when I was in the body cast, my oldest sister took me to see Romeo and Juliet, Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, in the
Hmm.
drive-in. And I was never so touched
Yeah.
and affected. I sat in the back seat and wept.
Wow.
And I went home and memorized the balcony scene, both characters, the next day. And I used that speech to get accepted at Juilliard.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you where the connection was to get into
Right.
Juilliard. So
It
okay.
got me out of the projects, basically.
Yeah.
Shakespeare he rescued me. And then, I learned acting. I did my best to sabotage it. Believe me, I got kicked out of acting school. I had a lot of problems, but I did learn,
Hmm.
despite myself. I did learn
Right.
from the greatest teachers in the world: John Houseman, Elizabeth Smith, the great Robert Williams,
Hmm.
Gene Lesser, Stephen Aaron, um, Tim Monick. Tim Monick is the top dialect coach in the in the industry. So I had these great teachers, and like I say, in spite of myself, I learned.
Hmm. I like that. In spite of yourself, because you were still your mind though was wanting to absorb like a sponge, I'm sure. So
Yeah, I mean, I was still taking it on, and now I'm a kid. I moved from where I was to New York City, Juilliard, where musicians are practicing 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
right.
And Rudolf Nureyev used to come in. He used to do his entire dance routine in the Balanchine studio before he went on and did it at night. And he would come
Wow.
out soaking wet, and he'd
Hmm.
run to the showers and get dressed and prepare for the show. And this started to make an impression upon me that these people
Hmm.
are like seriously committed.
Yeah.
So I, get kicked out of acting school, and I get very lucky. Mandy Patinkin, the great actor everyone knows, great
Mhm.
singer, he and I were doing a play in Baltimore at the center stage where I got my equity card. I said, Mandy, can you help me get an agent? And
Okay.
he's like, sure, I'll call mine. And it just happened to be Jeff Hunter, one of the greatest agents that ever lived.
Hmm.
And within a week of signing with him, I booked 2 movies the same day.
Wow.
So I got a lot of success very young.
Hmm.
I got the next movie I auditioned for, and the next one, and so it looked like I was like on my way. And
Right.
they were comparing me to James Dean and all sorts of overly flattering um, compliments, which I loved. But this is the interesting part, Eric. As I progressed from either play or movie to play or movie, I realized that many of them required me to sing,
Hmm.
and I was stone tone deaf.
Okay.
So, in point of fact, my last play at Juilliard, which was The Lower Depths by Maxim Gorky, I had to play a character that had to play and sing a very difficult Russian ballad.
Hmm.
And I went up to the director the first day of rehearsal. He was from the Moscow Art Theater. And I said, Boris, I don't know how to play the guitar or sing. And he looked at me and he goes, must learn.
Must learn. Wow.
So I spent $25 of your money, and I went and bought myself an Epiphone guitar,
Yeah.
and I played that thing. I cleared part, like if you were having a party and you wanted everyone to go home, you'd ask me to play the guitar. I cleared train stations. I was so terrible.
Yeah.
I couldn't tune it. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't. This is before tuners.
Hmm.
But lo and behold, come the fourth week of rehearsal, I learned that difficult
You got
song.
that piece.
Yeah, I mean, there were people from Juilliard around. They were listening to practice, and they were going, I don't know how to tell you what you're not doing.
Right.
And the patience these people had with me
Yeah.
was incredible. And I eventually got it.
Right.
And I learned that it was just tension
Hmm.
that I could, in fact, hear. And anyone can, and if you can speak, you can sing.
Yeah.
Singing is just extended sound.
Right.
You may not like my voice, but I can still sing. I love Bob Dylan's voice, for example. So anyway, this led me to begin to study music more seriously and take it more seriously. And then I found that writing songs was very therapeutic because I'd be away on locations for long
Hmm.
periods of time, and I'd have my guitar. I bought a new guitar after a little bit of movie money.
Now,
Um,
was New York still home base for you?
New York was home base
Okay.
for me.
So you left Philly, got to New York, and kind of never left.
Kind of never left. I did live in LA for 5 years.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. I am. No, I'm not. I had a great
Actually,
time.
LA is great. I've been a lot of times. So
It's great when you have money.
There you
And
go.
when you're working in LA, there's no place like it.
Yeah.
It's like paradise. The
Hmm.
women, the cars, the power. It was, I mean, it was wonderful as a young man to be exposed to such diverse and specific aspects of the industry that I didn't know existed,
Hmm.
producing, screenwriting. So then, I kept on as an actor and realized that the the way it happened for me is that I either have to play the main guy
Okay.
or it's best not to use me.
Okay.
I tend to pull a lot of focus.
Gotcha.
So unless if it's episodic TV, unless it's the guy that like is the main villain,
Hmm.
because they don't want to upstage the main
Hmm.
people, and I just had a tendency to pull focus because I'm good.
Yeah.
And as I grew more musical, I got even better and got less work and less work,
Wow.
less work. I was still doing regional theater.
Okay.
I did soaps, All My Children, One Life to Live.
Hmm.
But these things, look, I raised two children and they had health care, first class health care the entire time. So I did okay. I did better than most. But I wanted to expand my possibilities. So I went back to school at age 36 with a wife, a child, and another one on the way to get a
Mm.
master's degree at the University of Iowa,
Okay.
which is ranked above Harvard for writing.
For writing. Okay.
And my second year there, I got a scholarship.
Hmm.
I won a scholarship due to a piece that I had written about William Faulkner. Now, in
Oh, wow.
fairness, I got to perform it.
Okay.
So that kind of helped
Yeah.
that I knew how to perform.
You know
If
how
you
to
just
perform.
read it on the pit, you know what I mean? I was lucky. That's the name
What
of my one person play, Lucky Man. Go ahead.
lucky man? Was it difficult during that period of life? Because I've had a steady corporate job for 20 plus years, so I write on the side. I don't have to, and I'm my writing produces money. I mean, I make money on it, so I'm better than some. When you compare yourself, it's a dangerous thing, but I'm actually able to generate income on it. But it's not primary source income. I'm not at that position yet or anything, so I've never had to rely on my craft to pay my bills. What's that pressure like when, you're doing soaps, you're doing that, and you have a kid, another kid on the way, and you are relying on that to pay your medical bills, your rent, and all that? How do you, does that, how do you do you have to hyper focus when you're going to do auditions, or how does that translate?
It's a very interesting question because it's been that way my whole life and it's that way today. You have to be a certain type of person.
Hmm.
You have to be a person to whom deadlines are fun. You have to be a person to whom crisis is comfortable and exciting. You have to be a person that lives in a danger zone and is comfortable doing it because I know when it's time to go,
Hmm.
I got it. Not always, and I've had my share of losses and setbacks. But I think that I ultimately, well, I had a great wife. She's my ex-wife now, but now my best friend, Lisa, who supported me through all these years.
Okay.
And I think that had a lot to do with my
Hmm.
ability to keep going, even though she and I had been separated. Um, for many years, we stayed closely connected because of the children we
Hmm.
both love. And then, things began to change. Also, I was doing American Buffalo with Al Pacino when I was 24.
Yeah.
And one day I come out of the theater, it was always lines and autographs. I'm like, nobody. I'm signing autographs. And Vinny Pastore from The Sopranos,
Hmm.
Big Pussy, he's standing there and he's like, hey, he had just stolen the fucking sign. he had just opened up the case and
Taking it
lifted
out.
this, and he's standing there holding it, and he's going, "Hey, would you sign this for me?" And no, I didn't know if the guy worked there. I didn't know. I didn't like, sure. And would you put it to Vinny? I'm like, sure. He goes, and we're standing there. He's committing robbery, and he's holding this fucking thing, and he's
You're
like,
an accomplice at that point.
right. And he's like, "Hey, Tommy, I got a bar. It's called Crazy Horse. It's going to close down. We're going out of business. We're bankrupt. I always wanted to be an actor." I said, "Yeah. So how do you do it?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, first you got to get trained.
Hmm.
You have to study somewhere and learn your craft. And then where do I go?" I said, "Well, there's fucking thousands. I had no interest in teaching, not zero."
Yeah.
He goes, "What about you? Would you teach me?"
Hmm.
And I went, "Okay." So he rented a room in a flop house, and every week we would meet for a couple hours.
Hmm.
And he paid me, I don't know, $25 or whatever it was back in the, this is 80, 81. And I took him through some basic fundamental exercises. And he got to the point where he was ready for text. And the next thing I knew, 3 months later, I had 35 students.
Wow.
I never advertised. I
Hmm.
never asked anyone,
Word
"Hey,
of
you want?"
mouth spread, basically.
And then I realized I had a propensity for this. I really could help people. I
Yeah.
have a gift, a vocation,
Hmm.
and it helps people. I hope. I like to think, um, build character,
Hmm.
because you have to be committed. You have to
Yeah.
rehearse. You have to learn your lines. You got to show up for your partner.
Right.
You got to be able to. And I often as I can, I put my students in front of audiences so they
Mhm.
can really, be under fire.
Yeah.
I'm
Your feet to the
completely
fire.
opposed to this closed. You can't come into my. Hey, anybody, listen. Anybody that ever wants to come watch my acting class, feel free. You know, I'm not afraid of anybody watching. I
Hmm.
tell kids to bring their parents, their girl. I
Hmm.
don't care, because I feel what I do is help people. I open them up to literature. I turned you on to a quote from Tolstoy
Hmm.
earlier that you hadn't heard, which is so useful.
Yeah.
Learning how to wait. You know what it's like to wait for
Hmm.
things. It's difficult, but Tolstoy said, "He who learns how to wait can achieve anything." And
Yeah.
you think about, he was a genius. He was a
It,
literary genius.
it was. Yeah.
So then at that point in my life, I was teaching, I was still acting, went back to school, got my master's degree in writing, and sold the piece that I had written about Faulkner to a big Hollywood producer named Barry Kemp.
Okay.
And we developed it, and it closed on opening.
Oh, goodness.
And I got reviews that vilified me.
Hmm.
One from the San Francisco Chronicle, and I'm paraphrasing, but when Thomas G. Waits isn't singing, which he doesn't do very well, he's acting in such a overly expressive manner that it makes the audience want to turn away and cringe rather than what. These were bad reviews,
Yeah. Wow.
and I was cut to the quick.
Hmm.
Uh, that was my plan. That was going to be my one man show was going to be my way in.
Your way
But
in.
there
Yeah.
were, yeah, these failures are very painful.
Hmm.
Very painful for a person that's making his living support. And
Sure.
by we had two children. So then I moved to LA,
Hmm.
and I started teaching practice. Again,
Okay.
one woman shows up named Lori Hearn. God bless her. She shows up one. And I'm like, okay, and I just taught as if there were 100.
If there's a, yeah, room full.
Same thing 3 months later. 35 students, and now my own acting company. So I started
Wow.
directing a lot of plays and so forth.
Hmm.
The whole time I've been playing music. In the 80s for a while, I had a new wave punk rock band called the Push-Ups. And I used to do one-handed push-ups as part of the act.
It's
That
part of
was
the
the
act.
thing. And we got signed to a letter of intent by Atlantic Records and CSAC Music Publishing.
Okay.
And what that meant was they paid the musicians and they paid for the rehearsal space, which was great.
Hmm.
But as soon as we got in the process of recording, we were supposed to make a demo for them. Everybody started fighting over ownership. And
Wow.
I had written all the stuff,
Hmm.
but the lead guitar player was like, wait a minute, I'm playing lead here. Like, doesn't that mean I own a piece? Then the piano player's like, and I play the introduction. What?
Well,
So,
if he does that, I do this. So, oh
and I'm
goodness.
singing the harmony. I'm like, what the? So it was a disaster, and they rejected us. So I put music down for a very long, long time.
Hmm.
And then
Did you still play, or did you just not pursue it?
always,
Okay. So
always,
you, okay.
always play, learn, trying to learn, whatever songs are on the radio.
Hmm.
My hero, and I'm a big Bruce fan, Jackson Brown. When they would have an album come out, I'd sit down and try to figure out their songs. So I kept it going and I kept my songwriting up. But during the pandemic, I went, okay, now I can't do anything.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. And you're in lockdown central really when it comes to New York. Very strict. Yeah.
The laundromat, the drugstore, and the grocery store. And how many times can you go to them?
Hmm.
And it was during that time that I said, well, what do you really want to do, Tom? You've
Hmm.
survived and you've made it, and I was still working. I think I booked The Punisher, Homeland, and one other TV show all around the same time
Okay.
before the pandemic. I said, I really want to make films. I've
Hmm.
always wanted to make my own films.
Right.
So I wrote a script called Target, which
Yep.
was terrible. I mean, the first draft was just almost unreadable. I rewrote it 26 times. I sent it to a script doctor. He gave me scathing pages of notes.
Yeah.
I I integrated all of them,
Hmm.
and I came out with, I thought, a pretty decent script.
Hmm.
Then I never realized I had the capacity to raise money, but I guess if you want something badly enough,
Yep. You find a way.
I found, first of all, I found a producing team of Vinnie Petrosini, Stevie Conca, and Alyssa Rabinowitz, three close mates of mine.
Okay.
Alyssa was the line producer. Vinny and Steve were the creative executive producers. I didn't have a dime to give them. I paid them back end, and they worked like driving people in the middle of the night. We did everything by SAG rules. We even had to hire people to fucking spray Lysol. It was a pain. An intimacy coordinator because there were sex scenes.
Yeah, that's a new thing in the last decade, I guess, or so, or thereabouts. Yeah. That's gotta be a little awkward. Sex scenes, I would assume, are awkward anyways, but if you've got someone like
Breathing down your
choreographing,
neck.
yeah,
Luckily, I had this wonderful actress named Jem Murphy, who you can see if you ever watch my movie Target. It's available on Amazon Prime. Please rent or buy it if you can afford it. I'd so deeply appreciate it. And she's gorgeous, aside from being a wonderful actress, but she's so fun.
hmm,
I mean, there was no nudity. She had to wear a bra and a G-string and heels. And she was just like, hey, boys. She'd throw her robe off and be like, let's make a movie.
that's hilarious.
She made it fun.
Yeah, she right.
She was,
Took the
she was
pressure off that.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I could get in and, work with people and do my job as a director. And I think the movie came out pretty well. We made it for 150,000. And it's, you know, um, I wish it had more advertising from the distributor, but that's a whole other distribution in films is like the Wild West. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you have Paramount or, A24 behind you. It's like, yeah, you and what other 19-year-old made a movie on their iPhone,
Right, exactly. Exactly, yeah.
But I did it and it got released and it
Hmm.
got reviewed and people seem to like it online.
Hmm.
And I certainly want to make another one. And
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, that's one of my questions.
I've written a horror film called Devil's Story.
Okay.
Okay, everybody knows the story of the devil, right? Lucifer gets kicked out of heaven.
Hmm.
Basically, isn't that the drill? He pissed off God, and God said, "You get out of here because you're not a good devil," and he casts him out of heaven, right?
Right.
And then he, I guess starts his own camp, and he's going to be God's enemy for life.
Hmm.
But nobody has ever told the devil's story.
From his
No,
perspective?
correct.
Ah, okay.
So I researched and researched and researched, and I came up with a gem of a defense. I
Okay.
mean, a flawless defense that even the most religious, and I was raised a religious Catholic,
Hmm.
people would have a hard time disputing. So it makes it a debate
Okay.
as well as horror.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
trying to get that. Kelsey Grammer's attached himself to it, Chris Nellis, Jennifer Love Hewitt. And of course, my dream is to get the great John Carpenter to score it.
Hmm.
And he said, "Get the money, then call me."
I was gonna say, because you worked with John on the thing.
Yeah, he's
Wow.
the great. He's the great. He helped me. He mentored me through Target too.
Okay.
I would call him up. The lights out. What the fuck do I do? The lights out. They won't bring us a new one.
It's a nice person to have in your
I'm
Rolodex. I was
let me
actually
tell you.
I said that term. So my son's 17, and I just used the term Rolodex with him recently, and he's kind of like, "The heck is a Rolodex?" And I was just like, "Oh my goodness, that's right. I have to explain things like that to you." So, just some of the things you talked about, I kind of think back to my son because he's 17, trying to find his path. He just got accepted in the last week to Eastern Tennessee State University. They have a bluegrass program, very well-renowned bluegrass program. So
Wow.
he's actually doing dual enrollment. So he's a senior this year, a rising senior, and
Mhm.
he's homeschooled and he's doing a dual enrollment program. Mainly most of his classes are at Eastern Tennessee State. He's got to go one day a week, and we're a drive from it. So it's a little shorter from his mom's house than mine. But I thought about you as you're talking because he's, kind of struggling with that with music and finding, and he wants to start singing. So, Steve Martin has a band, and one of the guys that performs with Steve, and Steve lives up in Brevard, North Carolina. One of the guys that performs with Steve lives around Saluda, North Carolina. So my son has met him through karate, and not to learn how to play guitar, which my son is getting really good at anyways, but he's talking with him about how to sing because my son he's not found his voice yet. So, and he's not getting it from me. I might have a good speaking voice, but if I started singing, you'd be like, Eric, stick to books, stick to writing. So,
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, if you can learn how to sing, singing is really important.
yeah,
You just got to do it. You just got to be bad until you're good. I
until you're
mean,
good. Yeah.
it's terrible in the beginning. People want to cover their ears and run to the other room, but eventually, if you relax, your boy will he'll relax into it.
Is it like a must? So I don't know much about singing. I love music and I've been a fan. I go to tons of concerts, but think of it like a muscle, something you have to work out and strengthen and get to it where it will sound better.
Think of it this way: tell him to find his favorite singer and impersonate him.
Okay.
Just copy. The first stages of any art form, learning any art form, is copy.
Is to mimic. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And to mimic, to mime,
Yeah.
right?
Right. You had to do
Right.
that to pay some bills too, right?
You
Were
name
you
it.
in Times Square?
You,
Like
you name it. I did
you.
it.
So
And so that's the genesis. And I hope it provides the moral observation that necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
If you're a guy that's had enormous success as a young actor, and then it all stops for whatever fucking reasons, you have to survive.
Hmm.
So luckily, I was a trained stage actor, so I could always get work on stage.
Yeah.
And um, I also have a good speaking voice. I got a lot of work in voiceover.
Hmm.
And, I wasn't a bad looking kid in my 30s. So I did tons of commercial, Levi 501, Chase Bank, you name it. I had made a lot of dough. So I was resourceful. And then I found my teaching practice. And that
Hmm.
is sort of my livelihood now.
Did you have
Although,
to, at any point, did you have to fall back and just take a non-creative type job, working somewhere,
uh, well, let's
delivering
put it,
pizzas, doing, who knows what, especially in New York. Were you on one of those bikes going down Broadway?
no,
Okay.
no, no. I, oh my God. It was bad in LA in the beginning after Dark Laughter failed, the Faulkner play.
Hmm.
I limped into New York with the, $5,000 credit line, a wife, two kids, and no job.
Yeah.
And so I tried working for this guy selling trucking, like if you ship a bunch of stuff from
Hmm.
here to there, your company, I
Sure.
tried to get you to use my trucking company. So I had
Yeah.
to call all these guys and beg. And I tried. I went in every day. I drove around and visited. I did it, lasted 2 weeks. The second week was payday.
Hmm.
It was like $795 for 2 weeks. And this is like 1993, 94. So it was enough to help get us by.
Right.
So I went to get my paycheck, and the guy goes, "How'd you do this week?" I said, "Well, you know how I did, Phil. I didn't do anything. I tried. I'm out there. I mean, you can check my speedometer. I'm not." And he goes, "I thought so." And he pulls a shotgun out and points it at me.
Holy cow.
And he goes, "I guess you want your check, don't you?" And I'm like, "Phil, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you?" He was a Sikh, and he didn't wear the turban.
Didn't, okay.
Pointing the gun at me. I'm like, "Listen, man, I got a wife, I got two kids at home. I need that check. I'm not trying to. I'm working on. I swear." And he goes, "I'm just kidding." And he gives me the check, and I went, "Okay, that's the end
I
of that deal." And I think it was the next day I came home to Lisa and I said, I can't do any normal job. You can't hire me as a waiter because I scare the customers. I can't fucking be a bartender because I'm an alcoholic. I'll drink the place fucking dry.
I will. Oh goodness.
I don't know the difference between a screw and a nail. I'm completely useless. The only thing I can do is, that's when I started my acting
Your
class
acting studio. Okay.
in LA. Yeah, we had a great theater company called Tomcats, that had a very successful season and was well reviewed by the Los Angeles Times. And then, sadly for me, I developed the disease of alcoholism had taken over, which is why my wife divorced me.
Hmm.
I say this to anybody out there that might have, substance issues. You can live without it. You can do it one day at a time. And if you do, it's a beautiful life waiting for you.
Hmm.
And I'm not like, super famous or anything, but if I have any influence over anyone and can help anyone in that regard, go to an AA meeting, an AA, whatever your issue is, put your hand up and be honest with yourself, and
Right.
you can turn your life around.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. I break my own anonymity. It's my right to do so if I feel it's useful,
Yeah. Well,
helpful.
the power people have within, I think a lot of times we convince ourselves we're stuck in whatever whatever phase in life we are. And sometimes you are, but I think if you can get over it, and it's not easy in any regard, but if you can get over that mental hurdle, if you can get past all those doubts and frustrations and everything that's kind of driving you to whatever it might be, you can get to such a beautiful place. And outside resources obviously can help with that. And so much of it though is done where you've got to just have like a serious conversation with yourself. Like, what do I want to, do when it, and I've never struggled. I've drank over term of over the course of my life, but I've never like been where I had to have it. So like even this year, I was starting the year off just making a lot of health changes. I got to the spot end of last year where I'd gone through a divorce, not let myself go horribly, but I put on weight. I was focusing on writing, focusing on my kids and my day job and all that. And my health was, it was low end. I would walk. That would be my exercise was walking. So finally, January 1st, I just said, okay, you know what? That's my deadline. I don't believe in resolutions, but we're going to work on this one. Is like change your diet, no drinking, exercise more. And that transformation, how that helped me was pretty remarkable. But it was all, this is where it happened. It happened right in my head. I had to just every day get up and go, okay, boy, Oreos sound good for a snack. No, guess what? You're carnivore now. You're just eating meat, eggs, and dairy, which gets really old after a couple months. But it was, and I wasn't gonna do it for the rest of my life, but I was doing it to kind of discipline myself and saying, hey, and like with alcohol, I went to took my kids to a Braves game with some family down in Atlanta in April. Yeah, it was middle April. I hadn't had a drink all year. And Mike was with my cousin, and she goes, "Hey, you want to whatever daiquiri or whatever it was?" Like, sure. So, and my kids even were like, "Dad, you haven't been drinking. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just enjoying the moment. I'm gonna have a drink. Guess what? I won't have one again tomorrow, or probably the day after, or another month, or whatever." Because I had got to that point where I knew, hey, you can have a treat, but you have to treat it as a treat, not as, hey, we're back to what we were doing again. It's like, no, you can't do that. So.
Well, it's interesting. There's a great distinction. You the love of my life, Lisa, uh, she can have a glass of wine,
Hmm.
and it is, nothing. She can have it or not have
Right.
it. It really doesn't make any difference to her. You people, normal people, don't have what we have. We have something in our brain that if I have one glass, one sip, even a
Hmm.
sip, and it hits the brain, we can't stop.
Yeah.
We just can't stop. We might fall asleep, but it's a
Right.
terrible addiction. Oh, it's a hard thing, but it's a great thing to recover from. And man, the beauty of life is so worth it.
Hmm.
And life is still hard, man. It's hard for everybody.
Right.
I don't care who you are, what you do, where you come from, what you look like. Life is, I think it's meant to be.
Right. I
You
agree.
know, I don't, I think Charles Darwin said, it is not the strong that survive, it is those who are capable of adapting.
Hmm.
And so it's constantly,
Persevering, basically.
and yeah, perseverance is certain. There's a lot of people with talent that gave up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I was going to say with your experience and just with who you've acted with and your things is that's the question I get a lot of times is when it comes from a writing perspective like like because people always you always look at the top earners as look at what they've done. It's like, yeah, but you got to understand you don't get to that phase. There's one unique trait that all successful people have. They didn't quit. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't fail at some point. They failed plenty of times, but every time they'd fall, they'd get back up. Now, maybe they would get back up and they would do something different. Okay, maybe acting for movies isn't working. Okay, maybe I need to move into television, or maybe I need to move into the theater, or maybe I need to start like for yourself. Maybe I need to start acting classes where I training people. But that perseverance, that adapting and finding what works is how you succeed, and even not succeed monetarily, because at the end of the day, all of our lives are going to come to an end. doesn't matter what we collected. It doesn't matter if we have a penthouse in New York City or I just saw something the other day, a couple days ago, I guess it was, Affleck and J-Lo got or getting divorced, and they're trying to sell their like I don't know, $70 million mansion in LA. And it was just like, it showed pictures of it. And it was like 14 bedrooms and 28 bathrooms. And I looked at that and I look, of course, probably a lot of people would too. I looked at it and go, yeah, that's the excess in life that it's like, what do you need 28 bathrooms for? You know what I mean? I don't like cleaning one bathroom.
Right.
Now, granted, you're at that level, you're not cleaning your own bathrooms probably, but the the the
Probably
the the,
not.
the fact is what do you actually need in this life? Because here you buy a $70 million house, and guess what? Someone else is going to live in it someday, or you're going to get divorced and have to sell it and try to find a buyer or whatever. But it's like those things in life that you collect, they don't actually mean very much versus the experiences you have in life. You've talked and you've opened up with me on this about just being able to train people, being able to teach people. That impact not only affects that person, but it affects their life, and they're going to go in, they're going to have an impact on other people. So you don't know that one class, that one person you trained on how to do a scene, how that alters their life, which will then can ripple down and generations from now can alter, someone's life, that's pretty powerful.
I think it comes down to one thing: how you make people feel. People don't
Absolutely.
remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel.
Right.
And if you can dedicate your life to the purpose of trying to lift others up in
Hmm.
whatever way, shape, or form, through whatever craft or skills or talent you might have been given at birth that you've developed, I don't think I was born very talented, to be honest with you. I've become a good songwriter. I wrote all the music for Target, the
Hmm.
film. Uh, and I'm a good performer. Our band is really good. Heartbreak Waits. We're going to Atlantic City tonight, as a matter of fact, to
Oh,
play
wow.
tomorrow afternoon and try to get a residency. We have a great four-piece band, all 60s type harmonies,
Hmm.
a lot of harmony and really, really good songs. I'll send you some.
Yeah, I'd love
And
to. I'd love to come see you guys live at some point. I'd love to be up in that area. So,
yeah, yeah, it'd be great. But listen, if your son ever needs anyone to talk to, I'm really good with helping out young kids.
okay.
Just useful. I've been around, I've done a lot. I can,
Appreciate that.
I've helped a lot of young kids, and I extend myself. You have my number. Tell him if he needs any help.
Thank you.
Needs just someone to talk to. Please call me.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that means a lot. Hearing people, especially people that have experienced it, means more. And I get it, from a dad's perspective, you always or not always, but it's common to, have parents and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, but their mom, their dad." It's different when you hear the advice from someone that's walked that path. Because I'll say things frequently and he'll, you almost get that look of, yeah, sure, dad. And it's like, no, I actually do.
Right.
I've achieved the level of success with writing and,
Yeah.
I know a few things, but
Our
eh,
kids don't want it. They don't want to hear it.
no, they
You know,
don't.
you know, uh, they forget. They'd rather be like boo. They're our own children.
Right.
It's some sort of protection layer. I don't know what it is, but
I know. Like you're saying with your kids, like taking very like in some ways take little interest in what we create,
right.
which in my books aren't for my kids. So I've had a couple people ask that, have your kids ever read your books? I'm like, no, but my daughter's
Yeah.
also 12, so she doesn't really need to read a political thriller or an assassination book or any of that kind of stuff that I enjoy writing. I'm actually working. It's funny you mentioned how you've got the idea for the basically the horror, the devil thing. So I'm working on this won't air for a little while, so I can say it because it'll probably come out by then. I'm actually working on a short story for a horror comic. Current, and I just started writing it this morning, actually, before we got on, and I'm trying to get my head around it and like, okay, where am I going to go with this thing? Because it doesn't have to be much. It has to be 4 pages, 5 pages. I can write 4 or 5 pages in a day, easy. That's not a problem for me. But I'm just trying to get my mind around like this isn't my normal thing. And I'm doing it because it's not my normal thing. Because creatively, I don't want to just have, I don't want to be just a square that goes into the square hole. No, I want to have, there's got to be different shapes. There's got to be different challenges. There has to be something that excites me. So
Let's sum it up with this because I got to run. The great man does what he cannot do.
I think that's a good way to end it.
Ralph Waldo Emerson.
All that classic reading of yours is
Pays off.
it's a blessing. It
Yeah.
is absolute blessing. So, well,
Hey,
Thomas,
it was great talking to you, mate.
it was a joy to have you. If people want to find out more about you, obviously, if they want to go
They
out
go to
and they want to buy Target,
thomasgwaits.com. They'll see Target, my movie Target. It's available on Amazon Prime. My band is called Heartbreak Waits, and my teaching TGW Studios is on there. I have a movie coming out. The screening is next week, so it'll be coming out soon. All the stuff I'm doing is on thomasgwaits.com.
we'll send people there. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it.
All right, Eric, you bet. Take care of yourself.